And we're live! Welcome to RockSim Live. My name is Tim Van Milligan, and thank you for coming today. I have the chat going, so if you have questions about how to use RockSim, RockSim Pro, or the Launch Visualizer, go ahead and put those questions into the chat. I don't have any preloaded questions from anybody today, so I am here to help you out. Any questions you might have. So far, we've got Chris's Rocketry and More from Golden Valley, Arizona. So he's the only one that's checking in, although I see other people are in the room. So if you're in the room, go ahead and say hello and where you're watching from, so that we can recognize you. Yeah, that's great. How did you enjoy the eclipse this week? Today is April 12th, and we had the eclipse on April 8th. And so, in the comments or in the chat, go ahead and tell me your story. I want to hear what you did. Did you launch rockets? I know last week we had a couple of people that were talking about launching rockets during the eclipse. If you did, let me know how it went. Oh, we have Troy Ermit from Riverton, Utah here. Hello, Troy. Yeah, so let's see. I'll throw up my desktop. I did a trip to northern Texas to see my daughter and the eclipse. So my daughter is a student at the University of North Texas, and so I went down on Saturday and I spent all day Sunday with her, and then on Monday she had class in the morning, but as soon as her class got out, I picked her up and we drove east so that we could be in the line of the total eclipse. And of course they predicted cloudy weather. But it didn't stay cloudy the whole time. So about an hour before the eclipse started, the clouds kind of just vaporized, and we had some like really, really high clouds, but nothing that was too terrible. You could see the sun easily, and then the moon started going across, and let me see, I had some photos. So there was my first photo of the eclipse. Let me zoom in here, see if I can make it bigger. It's there it is right there. So that was the first one. And then I said, hey, I got a telephoto lens. So now I had, you know, my goggles, and they had the dark plastic. And so I was shooting through those glasses. So I didn't have a real lens to do this. And so mine aren't that great, but there's the first one. And I thought I had some more queued up here. Come on, computer. Here's the second one. As we were getting closer and closer to the full eclipse, this is where I had the telephoto lens on. And you can see the moon right here. And I said, man, that's not going to cover the sun. It just doesn't look big enough. Well, it was big enough. And then as soon as it got full eclipse, then we got that. And that was spectacular. Now, on the screen here, it looks like it was giant, but you know, the size of the sun in the sky is like you hold up your finger, and it's the size of your fingernail, so it's kind of like that. And so it looks impressive in the sky versus, you know, just a photograph of it like this right here, because this makes it look huge, but it's actually small, and it's just putting out this intense blue light. So that was my eclipse story. It was awesome. We had hardly any traffic coming back, which was what I was most afeared of. Thought I was going to get stuck in traffic, but I didn't. So and I got my daughter back to school after a couple hours, and then from there I started heading back home. So I was here Tuesday afternoon. I got back, but it was a good trip, well worth it. And then I find out that in like 20-something years, 24 years, there's going to be another eclipse, and it's going to go right between Colorado Springs and Denver. don't even have to go anywhere for that one. So that's cool. Chris's Rocketry and More says, and he's down in Golden Valley, Arizona, he says he's got about 1/3 of the eclipse there. And GarageMan Cave says, greetings from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Alfred Indy says, let's see Terry's eclipse launch videos. Did Terry, you get any eclipse videos? Terry says, I didn't launch this time. Last time I shot down the sun. Should have said I shot down the moon and the sun came back. Rocket Knight says, that's what I seen through my solar eclipse glasses. I shared with my neighbors and everyone is in awe. That's cool. Yeah, it was, you gotta see at least one full eclipse in your life. It's just spectacular. This was my second one. I saw the one in 2017. We drove to Wyoming for that one, just south of Casper, Wyoming, and that was spectacular too. But I think the one in Texas I liked better, although I have good memories of both of them. So, but we're here to talk about RockSim. So again, if you have a total eclipse story and you want to share it, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll be happy to talk about that and let you share that. So we're here to talk about RockSim. So here's RockSim on the screen. So if you've never used RockSim before, you go get it at the Apogee website. So our web address is apogeerockets.com. Just go there, and then when you come to the main screen, there's this scrolling banner bar here, and one of the panels says RockSim 11, and then you click on that. It will take you to where you can download or buy RockSim. If you just want to try it out, go to How To and Guides, come down here to Software, and then right here is the free trial. And you just enter your name and your email address, and we'll send you, you have to specify you want Windows or Mac. So we'll send you the right link so that you get that. Tell us where you heard about us, and that's how you get RockSim, the trial, and it will work for 30 days. And this is all the things it can do. It can do all the new stuff like the 2D flight profile. You can do the new airfoiled fin feature. It will do the automatic update of the rocket motors. So you don't have to have the full version for that. We always want to keep your database up to date with the rocket motors. So that's a new feature in version 11. And then if you want to activate it, so you'll get, if you purchase the software, you'll get an activation key. And that activation key, these videos, there's one for Windows, and then there's one for Mac. They're a little bit different on how you activate them, so there's videos there to watch. David Hayes from Florida, really Michigan. He's home next week, back to Michigan. I guess he's enjoying the warm weather, and then he's going to escape the hot weather and go back to Michigan. That's what my sister's going to do. She's down in Texas right now, and she's going to go back up to Michigan for the summer. Okay. How many of you do not have RockSim yet? RockSim 11. We released RockSim 11 about 2 weeks ago, and we have the free demo version, which I showed you here on this screen. But I've been thinking, maybe giving you an extended trial. So if you would like to have an extended trial, and this is good for today only, so you got to be watching live right now. And if you're watching on replay, maybe I'll give you an extended version, but I'll give you a shorter duration. So I'll give, if you would like to try RockSim for, let's say 6 months instead of 30 days. What you'll have to do, here's the process. You're going to send me an email, but you got to do it a special way. So on our website, you'll see this here. It says talk to a real person. And then down here right below that, it says the contact form. So click on the contact form. And then you want to send the email to, and this is the caveat. You got to do this. It's got to be sent to Launch Visualizer Questions. So if you choose any of these other ones, it won't come to me, and it's just going to, the people that answer those are going to say, I don't know what this is about. So it's got to be to the Launch Visualizer Questions. And then say, in the message, say, I'd like the 6 months trial. And you have to do that before the end of this hour of RockSim Live. So at, see right now it shows 2:11 p.m. So when we stop today at 3 o'clock, I'm going to go check my email, and everybody that's checked, that put in the message that say I'd like the 6 months trial, I'll give you the free 6 months. I'll give you an unlock key to do that. Now, if you're watching on replay, you got to do that same thing, but it's got to be done before 12 midnight tonight. So tonight is April 12th at 11:59 p.m. And I'll check those emails, and if yours comes in before 11:59 p.m., I'll give you 3 months free instead of 6 months. Because if you show up, you get 6 months. If you're watching on replay, you get 3 months. But, I mean, at least you're watching today. And if you're beyond that, 11:59 p.m., then you just get the free 30-day trial. But the 30-day trial is still pretty good. So, Terry Wheelock says he wants RockSim, but he's got to buy a new computer. Yeah, you want to do that, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Okay, so to learn more about RockSim, again, go to the how-to and guides, come down to the software, click on that, and you can find out what is RockSim, the version 11 features, the frequently asked questions, what you can do with RockSim, system requirements, the version history, what we've changed in each version. Here's some video tutorials. The RockSim Live training, which is what we're doing right now. If you click on that, it'll take you to our archives. So these are all the past issues, episodes. I think we're on episode number 162 today. We're a little bit behind in putting up our what are these called? The synopsis of what we talked about, and the timestamps that they occurred at. Troy Ermet says he's already upgraded to RockSim 11 and the new features are great. Well, that's cool. I'm glad that's going well for you there, Troy. Mark Sell says usually in Parker but checking from Las Vegas. So Mark Sell is in Las Vegas today. Alfred Indy says I've been updating the RockSim files from my rockets, adding in the airfoil fins and moving them into the launch visualizer. It did change the results in the visualizer in good ways, so that's good. Okay, so that's the archives of RockSim. So what's on my screen here is I'm writing a newsletter article about how to pick rocket motors. And basically what I've done here, see this tab right here called Recommended Motors. I generated that. First, it's really easy to do. You bring up your RockSim file, you open your RockSim file, then you just go to Prepare for Launch, which is this button right here. and then you click on recommend motors, and then here's the conditions that it's using for the launch. The only thing you might need to change is the launch guide length. This is a big fat rocket, so I made it a 6-foot launch rod, and then you can just click on the button recommend the motors. But I also did, I selected only single-use motors. And so when it does that, it runs the list, and it runs the list pretty fast. So this is the list that it generated, and it generated it in about 30 seconds. And then it's there's a list of recommended and not recommended. So right now I'm only showing the recommended. If I uncheck it, you can see now there's not recommended motors as well. You can see there's still a lot of them. And if you only want to see the recommended motors, just go up here to the column header, right click on that, and then just choose show only recommended motors, and then it will delete or hide all the not recommended. So now I have a list of just the recommended motors. You can see it's still a pretty long list, and these are only single-use motors. And so my article was about, okay, so you got a long list of motors. What do you do to pick your motor? Because there still might be, you know, sometimes people get overwhelmed when they see a big long list. They say, well, which one should I pick? All these motors will work. Every one of them in the list will work. So now it's kind of like, what other criteria might you be looking at to figure out if you want to use any particular motor? So the first thing that I said was, do you want to use single use or reload? And I narrowed it down to single use, but I still got a long list. So the next criteria that I might do is by altitude. And you can sort this list, and right now it's not sorted. So we go 1200 to 1400 to 900 to 1000. If you want to sort the list, just click on the column header. You can see it's sorted, and that's what this triangle means. It's sorted from the smallest, because the point is at the top, to the biggest. So the smallest motor that's recommended is an E24, and then the biggest one, if I scroll down, would be an I205. You know, so now I got, you know, up to 4,000 feet, and the smallest one is 683 feet. So that might be a criteria, is maybe I don't want it to go 4,000 feet. So then you would select, okay, what am I most comfortable flying? You know, maybe I have a small launch site, and I'm not sure if I'll get it back if it goes 4,000 feet. But I'm pretty sure I'll get it back at, you know, under 1,000 feet. So then I could say, okay, any of these motors right here, under 1,000 feet might work. And then you say, okay, that's good, but can I narrow it down even further? And then the answer is, okay, what could you use? What criteria could you use to narrow it down further? And what I would suggest is looking at the propellant formulation. So in the name of the rocket, the first letter is the it's not total impulse, but it's the impulse classification. It's kind of like how big your gas tank is. You know, an E motor is this big, and an F motor is twice as big as an E. G motor is twice as big as a F, and it goes up from there. But in some motors, you know, you got a range of impulse, and you might have like a half of an F tank of gas. And that's why your altitudes are changing. But then the last letter, okay, the first number is the average thrust in newtons. So this is kind of like how hard you're pushing on the accelerator pedal of your car. The further down you push it, the faster you're going to accelerate. And then the lighter you push it down, the slower you're going to accelerate. So if you want a high acceleration, you want a big number. If you want a low acceleration, a smaller number. But in this case, since we're picking motors, and we're just looking at it, is it recommended? and all of them are recommended. So I wouldn't choose a motor at this point based on acceleration. So that's why we're going to ignore that number, but we're going to look at the next letter after the number. So in this case right here, it's an F20W. So what does the W mean? And this is the propellant formulation. And Aerotech, I think these might all be Aerotech motors because they're the only one that makes a 29 millimeter diameter that's single use other than Estes. And there's none of the Estes motors are recommended. They only have the E16 and the F15. So all these rest are Aerotech. So what does the propellant formulations mean? So on this, I would recommend going to the Apogee website. And we're gonna, I already had the Apogee website open. There it is. Go to shop, and then go to Rocket Motors, and then go to Aerotech Motors, and we're gonna go 29 millimeter single use, because that's this chart right here. These are all 29 millimeter single use. And I'm just gonna pick one. Okay, so F25, it's not listed there. There's an F26. Those are not recommended. Here's an F26. And we click on that. And then, if you want to know the propellant formulations, just scroll down. And it gets to right here. So these are the Aerotech propellant types. And you can see there's a bunch of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different propellant formulations. And then down below, it tells you a description of them. So if it ends in a J or an FJ, it's either Blackjack or Black Max. So like this one right here, this F26, it's FJ. So that's the FJ there, and what FJ means, it's a Black Max. Aerotech also calls it fast Blackjack. That's where the F comes from, for fast, and the J is for Blackjack, but then they changed the name to Black Max. So it provides high visibility tracking of a dense black exhaust. In addition to a distinctive liftoff roar, Blackjack motors give your models lower acceleration and longer power flight than White Lightning or Blue Thunder motors. So now it's comparing it against other propellant types. Black Max provides significantly higher acceleration than White Lightning propellant. Now the White Lightning propellant, so up here is Black Max. So you can kind of see it's going to give you a black dense cloud of smoke. There's no real visible flame like a white. So here's the white. So White Lightning is the third one here. It's a brilliant white flame, dense bright white exhaust. So here's White Lightning, and you can see it's got a brilliant white flame where the Black Max doesn't. And so this page kind of describes each of the different propellant types. And now when you're picking motors, now we're picking, when we're getting to this point, we're looking at what is the visual aspect of the motor. You know, do we want a black flame or do we want a white flame? Do we want a metal storm or Mojave green, which is going to kind of give you a green glowing flame? There's the red line, which this image doesn't really do justice. It's like a bright fluorescent red. So here, like here's a G77R, which is the red line. So if I was choosing motors that go between 1,000 and 2,000 feet, I could choose a red line, a fast Blackjack, a white, another white, a T, which is Blue Thunder. And if you notice in your list, there's sometimes that doesn't have a propellant formulation on there. And if you look at these, like here's an F25W and here's an F25, And if you notice, they're going to the same height. And basically what this is there's two identical motors in the RockSim database. And why is there two identical motors in the RockSim database? And it's because they have different names. So now the database that we ship with RockSim, there's only going to be one of every motor. But one of the new features of RockSim 11 is it's going to automatically download new motors from the internet off of a website called thrustcurve.org. And on the thrustcurve.org, we don't control the names of those motors. And so it might have an F25 in there without the W. And so RockSim thinks it's a new motor, so I just better add it to the database just to be sure. So you're going to see duplicates that have slightly different names, but if you look at the performance is going to be fairly close. So if I had total control over the world and I could control the thrustcurve.org website, I would go through their database and update all the motor names so that this problem doesn't happen. Because it's going to cause confusion. You know, it's like I got two motors and they're identical. Yeah, I wish, you know, we have the G77R and a G77R. And again, the performance is the same. And there's a G72 and a G72, and the performance is the same. Yeah, so you're going to see some duplicates in here. And that's unfortunate. We tried to do our best to kind of eliminate the duplicates, but they sneak through. You know, we're trying to filter those out. And this is where we're not quite there yet. Terry Wheelock says, how do we input hybrid motors? Well, RockSim does have some hybrid motors in there. So if we go to prepare for launch, and if I go choose engine, this doesn't tell me. You can go under type filter and specify the hybrids. So here's 3 hybrid motors. They're 29 millimeters in diameter. They're all from Skyripper. But if you have a new motor that you're making yourself, that is a different process. So to do that, let me take a sip of water because now we're going to go down a new topic. Let me see if there's any other questions here. David Hayes says, does RockSim assume that the rocket is structurally sound enough to support a motor that will go 4,000 feet altitude? And the answer is no. Because RockSim does not do a structural analysis of the rocket. Because how you build the rocket matters. You know, what type of glue are you using? You know, is it hot melt glue, which is really weak? Or is it epoxy, which is really strong? You would have to know that kind of detail to figure out if the rocket is structurally strong enough to fly either really high or really fast. RockSim assumes that you're building it, that it will be structurally sound. But it does not do any calculations to figure out whether or not it will survive. That is totally up to you. It's really hard because we don't know how you built your rocket. But that's a really good question, David. All right, so how do you input a new motor into RockSim like you're creating it yourself? So there's my Eclipse photo again. So a reminder, if you have an Eclipse story, put it into the chat. Okay, so RockSim comes bundled with a second program. So when you buy RockSim, you actually get 2 programs. And the second one is called Engine Edit. And it's going to be in the same folder where your RockSim is stored. So on my computer, it's under the Applications, and then I'm going to find the RockSim folder. So here's RockSim 11, and in that folder is a program called Engine Edit. And I'll launch Engine Edit right now, and this is what it looks like. Let me make it bigger so you can see it. So Engine Edit allows you to edit the thrust curves of rocket motors, and you can create a new thrust curve if you want. So this is what it looks like. Down here is going to be a graph, and you want that graph as big as possible. So move your cursor up and down, and when you get to about right there, you're going to see my cursor change shape. That means I'm at that point on the screen where I can adjust it. So then you're going to click and drag with your mouse, and you can see, and this is as high as it will go. I can't go any further, but I can also shrink it down or make it larger. Okay, so to add a new motor, what we're going to do is you're going to click this button that says Add a New Motor. And then it's going to ask you a couple of questions. One, what's the burn time of this new motor? So it's a hybrid motor, so let's say it might be 6 seconds. So 6 seconds, and then what is the peak thrust? And you can choose newtons or pounds of force, and let's say it's going to be 100 newtons. And then you click OK, and what RockSim does, or Engine Edit does, is it draws a chart down here. And now what we're going to do is just going to click some points on this chart. And I think we have to double click. Yeah, so when you add a new point, double click on it. So you notice I added this one right here, but Engine Edit automatically added the 0 point, and it automatically added the 6 second point. So this is a thrust curve, and right now my total impulse is 181 Newton seconds. So this is kind of like a G motor. So an F goes to 80, 160 is a G. So this is a small F, or a small H motor, and H's go from 160 to 320. So if I want a full H, it would be right at 320 Newton seconds. So basically I'll select my point and then drag it. You can see now I'm at 277, and if I want to add another point there, I can drag it there. Now I'm a little bit high for an H motor. So I'll take that point and I'll move it down to there. So this is a thrust curve, and you can draw your thrust curve whatever you want. Typically, people will make their rocket motor, put it on a thrust stand, and then the thrust stand will give them a graph of force over time. And you'll put those points into your thrust curve like this. So this is a new motor right here. Right now we're at 375 Newton seconds. So I'm going to tweak it down a little bit. I want to get right at 320, which would be an H motor. 323, I'm really close. Okay, so that's okay, so there's a thrust curve. Okay, and now we're going to enter some information. So the manufacturer, you can choose from one of the common manufacturers, you know, or you can say unknown. You know, I don't know who makes this. And then give it an engine code. So what is the engine code for the one that we just made? Well, we know 320 Newton seconds is an H motor. I need to get back under 320. Okay, so that's an H. And what's the second? What's the average thrust? Well, RockSim or Engine Edit automatically calculates it. So this one is an H53. So I'm going to put an H53 right there. And then the engine type, let's say this is a hybrid motor. So you can specify that, and then you can specify ejection delays. The default is 0. If you want to add more, just hit the comma and then just start typing numbers. If you want to make it a plugged motor, put a P in there. Then you have to specify the diameter, and we're going to say this is a 29. And then you have to specify a length, I don't know, what, 195 millimeters long. And then you have to specify an initial mass of this motor. Now this initial mass is everything in the motor, and that's your propellant and your oxidizer. So I don't know what the mass of a motor is, so I'm going to go to the Apogee website and just look at one, just kind of get a rough estimate. Aerotech motors, 29. I don't want a loadable. See if there's an H. No, there's no H's. So shopping, rocket motors, Aerotech motors, and let's go single use. And I'm going to scroll down to get to this chart. So here's an H, and this H motor, let's see, where's the weight column? It's probably the last. Total impulse, that's propellant mass. And then if you want to change your columns, you can select this. And let's say I want manufacturer. I don't need a partner. Come on, I can't click on this. I don't need a part number. I don't need a delay, color, burn time. How come I'm not getting oh, here's initial mass. I want initial mass. I don't care about the price. Okay, so then it gives me my new chart right here. So here's the initial mass and here's a propellant mass. And so I'm looking at the H motors. So initial mass of 202 grams and a propellant mass of 112. Okay, so now I'm going to go back here. Initial mass 220 or 202 and propellant mass of 112. So I'm just guessing. You know, if you make your own motor, you're going to know this because you're going to measure it. And so as you put that in there, it created that code right there. So now we've created an engine file, and now we're going to save it, and we're going to do a save as. And I'm going to put it on the desktop so I know where it is. I'm going to call it the H53 underscore test. I just give it a name so that I can see it in RockSim, okay? Because we're going to load it into RockSim, and I'm going to hit save. And it's asking me, did I want to save it as a ENG? And you could save it as ENG or RSC, right? I think I just saved it as an ENG. So the difference is the ENG doesn't tell me it's a hybrid. So I need to resave it as a RockSim file. And so here's where you do it. Right now it's set to ENG, and I'm going to change it to RockSim format and hit save. And then it saved it. Okay. So now, how do we get that into RockSim? So that's what we're going to do next. And so we'll go back to RockSim. Alright, so here's RockSim. Let's see, do I need to make this a little smaller? Okay, right there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, Import, Engine Files. Okay, so now we need to find that rocket motor that we just made. And right now it's looking in the Data Import folder. But I know I saved it on my desktop. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to select that rocket motor. So here's the H54 test.rse. Click Open. And it said one engine file is imported. So that's good. So right now we've imported it into RockSim, but it's not ready to use. And so there's one more thing that we have to do, and that's what's seen here on the screen. Our new motor should show up on this left-hand column. So the left-hand column are the motors that are in the database, but are not yet going to be displayed when we go to load an engine. And the reason is, so sometimes you may not want to see these motors, because I got all these Animal Motor Works motors in here, and I don't think they're in business anymore. So I pulled them out of my database and I pulled them onto this side. So this side is the side where it's going to display in RockSim. These motors are not. And if I look in here, here's my new motor, and I need to move it to this side. So I'll just highlight it and say add. And so now I've moved it over to here, and so somewhere in here, probably if I scroll down to the H's, there it is right there, the H54-test. And now we'll click OK. And now let's go and see if that motor is in there. So now we're going to go back to prepare for launch. And we're going to go to 29mm motor mounts. We're going to choose an engine. And we're going to search our engine code for the H, what do we say, 53? Hit tab. And there it is, the H53 that we just made. Yeah, you remember it had a burn time of 6 seconds, so that kind of tells us that we got the right one. And again, it has an unknown manufacturer name. So at this point, we'll click OK. Let's see the drop down. So remember when we made our motor, we added some custom delays, 0, 4, 10 seconds, and there's also plugged custom. Let's choose the 10-second delay. Click OK, and it loaded it here. So this is, you know, the brown engine is showing, so we've loaded it. And we'll just click OK for right now, and you can see that the motor has been loaded. So then if we want to run a simulation, let's go back there. The engine is still there. Flight events, deploy the parachute at maximum ejection delay, which is standard. Our starting state, we're launching at a 1-degree angle off of a 50-inch launch rod. Let's make it 6 feet, 72 inches. Launch conditions, yeah, it's kind of a big wind here. So let's back that wind down to 8 miles an hour. And then do a flight profile and see what this rocket looks like with that H motor. So it's running the simulation right now. And then it's loading the sprite files, and this is our 2D flight profile. And you can see that my trees in my flight profile aren't showing, but that's because I need to do that. Alright, so there's the rocket motor down, or the rocket here on the pad. The wind, we have an 8-mile-an-hour wind blowing from the left to the right. And then when you launch it, you can see the rocket taking off. Now this is a 6-second burn, so it's going to burn a long time. Here, 6 seconds, so we have burnout. And the rocket is still coasting upwards. And we're at over 5,000 feet. This is an H motor, so it's going high. And then the parachute popped out, and the rocket is going to drift back down to the ground. And I can grab the time slider, and I can move it down here, and I can see how far downrange it lands. About 1,100 feet downrange is where I'll have to pick this one up. So that was how to create a motor, and then how to load a motor into RockSim. So we did that pretty fast, but it was not hard. But you do need to have your engine data. You need to collect your engine data first. It's creating your own rocket motors that's an expert level thing. You know, first you need to be able to make a motor that doesn't explode on you. That's a trick in itself. And then once you get it to work, then you need to put it on a thrust stand and measure all the forces. And you need to measure the initial weight and the burnout weight. And then you have a rocket motor. David Hayes says dinner plans. He's got to go. Okay, David, thank you for showing up. I appreciate you being here. I don't have any other questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it into the chat. We still got about 15 minutes to go. So there's still 15 minutes to get your 6-month free version of RockSim. And if you do it before midnight tonight, then you get 3 months. And if you wait after that, then it's just 1 month. And everybody qualifies for 1 month. Let's see, any other questions coming in? Not quite, not yet. Other thing that I was working on today was we were playing with this image right here, and a person asked me, how do you make these lines darker? Say you got poor eyesight and you want them darker. One of the things you can do is you go up to the or the RockSim preferences, not the system preference. Go to the RockSim preferences. On the Macintosh, it's under the RockSim menu, and on Windows, I think it's under the Help menu. But you go to Preferences, and then you want to go to 2D Drawing. And I just figured this out today. I was just playing with it today, and I got it to work. So by default, you get this thickness of line, and that is the default pen. So if you don't want to use the default pen and you want to type in a thickness, then you must uncheck the use default pen width. And when I do that, then it's going to use this number in here. And right now I've got a pen width of 50 inches. And where did I get 50 inches from? Well, I was playing around with it. And 50 inches gives me a darker line. So you can see my line is much darker. So I just went back and forth in the preferences, and I was changing on the 2D drawing tab, changing this width. So if I make it 100 inches, I should pretty much double the thickness of that. And you can see, yes, it is double the thickness. So it does work, like I showed you. So go to 2D drawing, change the width of the pen, but the units don't really work correctly, and that's what the part we have to fix. But you can adjust the width, and start with a big number like 100, or I think when I had it on points, I think I had it on like 1500 points to get a wide line. No, that was just like a normal line under that one. Preferences, if you choose a small number, let me go back to inches and say I wanted to make it 1 inch, and then hit tab and then OK. You can see it's very weak right there. I really have to zoom in a lot to be able to see those lines. You know, that's the default view right there, and you can just barely see it. So under Preferences, go to the 2D Drawing tab, and then change this to a pretty significant number, and then click OK. And then you can see that they do look much better. So where's my fins? There they are. Yeah, so if you want to make yours darker, that's how you do it. But one of the things that I noticed is once you do that, and if I stretch this, see the lines are even getting thicker as I'm making it bigger. And if I make it smaller, zoom out, that's as small as I can make it. So if I make it smaller like this, you can see that the line width is getting lighter and lighter and lighter. So you're going to have to play with it a little bit and find out what works well for you. If I go back to the default, under Preferences, 2D Drawing, and then just use the default pen width and click OK, you'll see it's that thickness. And then when you scrunch it down, that thickness pretty much stays the same. So if you want a constant thickness, that's the one to use. This screen right here, you can detach it, and if you want to reattach it to the main screen, just click on the header bar right here and drag it, and then when you get to the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that the screen changes. See that? It jumped. When it jumps like that, then let go on your mouse and it will apply it into the right spot. So let me make this a little smaller so you can see what I was doing. Okay, so back here I still have the engine edit. Let me just make that go away so that you're only seeing my RockSim screen. So if I want to detach this screen right here, over here on the Mac, you'll click this button. On Windows, it's on this side, on the right side, but over here on the Mac, it's on the left. So you click on that and it will detach the screen, and then you can adjust the size. So say you wanted a big screen with your rocket on it, you can do that. And then if to reattach it to RockSim, like I said, you could drag it down here. You can see that it jumped right here. You can also put this screen on the top, and so then you just drag it up here, and you can see that the screen, you know, it jumped downwards, kind of like a lampshade or, you know, a window shade. And then when you let go, it will reattach it right there. And if you want it back at the default position, go under here to View and say Restore Window Default, and it should move it back down here to the bottom. And if you can't get it to reattach, just again go to the View, Restore Window Default, and it will put it right back there. So that's what I learned today, new in RockSim. Terry Wheelock says, can we make a Rockatoon in RockSim? And the answer is no, because RockSim requires you to launch from the surface of the Earth. But if you wanted to launch above the surface of the Earth, you're going to either need to use RockSim Pro or the Launch Visualizer. So let's go to the Launch Visualizer. So the Launch Visualizer is at rocksim.com in a browser. So just go www.rocksim.com, and that will open up the Launch Visualizer. So a Rockatoon is a rocket launched from a balloon. So RockSim, and this is still loading, and the Launch Visualizer allow you to launch from above the surface of the Earth. So let me give you a new window here. For some reason Safari doesn't want to load rocksim.com. Let's resize my screen. Come on. Okay, I'm still logged in, so I gotta log out. Log out. Okay, so then I log in, sign in. Okay, so now we're logged in to RockSim, the Launch Visualizer. So when you're here, you need to first load a design. I have loaded my own profile, and I have already uploaded a lot of designs. If you have not used it before, when you go to select a design and hit Choose Design button, you're only going to have demo designs. And there's 6 demo designs that come with the software. I have uploaded a whole bunch of user designs. That means they belong to me. They're stored, you know, all my simulations that I've run with them are stored on the server, which is why these designs won't show up in yours, because you might not want to see my simulations. But the demo designs, they are there. So first we need to pick a rocket. So I'll just choose the Razzle Dazzle. And it loaded it here, and then it's going to draw it right here. Then we need to select our launch site. The default site is here in Pueblo, Colorado. And if I go 2D and zoom out, then we'll see the entire state of Colorado eventually. So there's the state of Colorado, the boundary. And then if I zoom out further, you'll see the United States. And Terry's down here in Texas somewhere. I think I'm not sure, but we'll pick this launch site right here. This is the Alamo Rocketeers launch site. I'm going to zoom in on that thumbprint or thumbnail. And this looks like it's at an old runway, an airport. They're launching right there. Okay, so we'll pick that launch site. And so on this field, we're going to be above the field, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put it like right here, right in the middle of this this field with the irrigation. So there's my launch pad. And I'm going to confirm the launch site. And right now it says the altitude at the ground coordinates of that point is 825 feet above sea level. That's what ASL stands for. And the landing zone is, should also be in feet, 825 feet. Okay, so that's that point on the Earth. Now, on a Rockatoon, we're going to launch from the air. So let's run one simulation with it on the ground. So, starting state, let's launch it straight up, aim to the north. Let's give it some wind, steady wind. Let's give it 5 miles an hour, coming out of the west. And let's load some engines, and this is a 2-stage rocket. So let's choose like an Estes C6. C6, 0, click OK. And that loaded it in the upper stage, but let's load it all into both stages. So here's the upper stage is a C60. We'll change that to a C67, and the lower stage is a C60. So it's going to stage at separation. So staging at maximum ejection delay, and our ejection delay is 0 seconds. So 0 seconds after the booster motor burns out, it's going to automatically stage. And then the parachute in the upper stage will deploy at the maximum ejection delay, and we set that at 7 seconds after motor burnout. So basically the rocket's going to take off, booster's going to drop away, the upper stage is going to burn, and then 7 seconds after it stops burning, the parachute's going to come out the top. Alright, so let's launch that, and it's going to use 18 credits, and so we'll simulate it. It's running the simulation, and then, okay, so it's drawing the rocket on the pad, and it's still drawing the maps. And if I zoom out, you'll see we're at that airport, not quite in the middle of our irrigation thing, but I don't think I was close enough. North is the black arrow down here, so I'll just swing this around so north is straight up. Too far. I do this. Okay, so there, our rocket is like right there. I want to tilt it just a little bit. Okay, and then when we launch it, the rocket is taking off. We don't see any smoke. Saw the flame. Let me pause it here. Let's get some smoke so we can see it. So I clicked on the settings, and then we go to flame and smoke. I'm just going to turn on both the thrust smoke and the tracking smoke. Click OK. Alright, so now we're seeing smoke. Let me start it over again. Alright, so the rocket is right here, and it's going to take off. Alright, so the booster is burning. Now the booster fell off. Now the upper stage is going, and it's coasting upwards. So 7 seconds after motor burnout. Oops. Motor burnout should be pretty close here. There it is, and there's the ejection. And so now the rocket is floating downwards, and you can't see it because we're zoomed out pretty far. But if I zoom in, we should see the rocket come into view, and there it is. It's drifting downwards. And let me zoom back out, and let's get see a plot. So if I go to the settings again, and then I come here to trajectory path, so we see a path, and it's going to be green. And I also want to see the ground track, and I want to see extruded flight path, and I'll click OK. So the green line is the trajectory of the rocket going up, and now it's drifting back down. This is kind of like a curtain of points in the sky. So you can see this is the ground track down here. You can see where the rocket is drifting. And it should be drifting straight to the east because we have wind coming out of the west. And as soon as it gets to the end, oops, too far. It's just spinning around. I can't be fast enough. All right. Oh, it disappeared. Oh, I turned it back to 0. Okay, so if I click there, okay, so there's where the rocket's going to land. It's going to land right in the nice grass or the whatever crop is growing right there. Okay, so that was launched from the ground. So now let's launch it from the air, from like a rocketoon. So let me close this. Come on. Okay, so to set that, we'll come here to the starting state. And no. We have to go back here to the launch site. Okay, so now our land altitude at ground coordinates. Okay, so here's our launch altitude, and this is above ground level. So let's say our balloon is up in the air, and it's at 2,000 feet in the air. Make sure this is in feet. 2,000 feet in the air. All right, and let's also go here to this starting state. So we don't have any velocity, so the rocket's not moving up or down. If the rocket was going with the wind, it should be drifting with the wind. But at the moment of launch, it's not drifting. It's at a specific point. So let's launch it again and see what the trajectory looks like. So that was our old one right there, and it landed right here in the grass. So remember that, it landed in the grass. So this time I expect it to land a lot further to the east. Okay, so now the rocket's upside down. Oh, there it is. I lost the rocket. There it is. Okay, so now if you kind of look at this, I zoomed out too far. So there's the rocket. But if I rotate this around, you'll see our rocket is actually up in the air. It's actually up in the sky, and it's 2,000 feet above the ground. So this time when we do a launch, so we're launching at that point in the sky. So it's, remember, this is attached to a balloon, and now it's launching from the balloon. And before we, our flight was about 100 seconds, and now we're at 225 seconds. So we're going to go a lot higher, and we're going to drift a lot further. So I'm going to pause it here, and then bring it all the way back down to the ground. Come on, I want to drag it. It's a little slow today. Come on, you'll catch up to me sooner or later. It's got to figure out every position of the rocket. There it goes. Okay, so now it landed on the ground. Now we can zoom out. Okay, so now this, this line here is the ground track, but actually when it launched, it started 2,000 feet up in the sky. Let's see if we can figure out where in the sky it started. Oh, there, right there. See this point right there, where the green line starts? It's probably hard to see on your screen, but here, let me make it a little bit bigger. So right there, up in the sky, is where we launched from. And then the rocket arced over, it went west a little bit, and then the parachute came out, and then it drifted east. And so our first time it landed somewhere like right about there, and now this time it landed over here on the runway. And so that's our Rocketoon launch. In order to do that, we got to use RockSim Pro or this launch visualizer. And the launch visualizer is working right now. RockSim Pro, we're not getting these maps. We're still working on that problem. It's turned into quite a big problem. Okay. So Terry Wheelock says his launch site is top secret. Just like Area 51. Okay, so that is a RockSim, the launch visualizer. And we also talked about RockSim today and how to load motors. We talked about how to pick motors. First, if you're picking motors, to kind of recap, first run the recommended motors, and that gives you a big long list of motors. Then you might narrow it down by saying, I only want single-use motors. And then you might narrow it down further saying, I only want my rocket to go between this altitude and this altitude, because that's what I'm comfortable with. And then finally, what kind of visual flame effects, what kind of propellant type do you want to use? And the propellant type is basically, it's the flame color. And I showed you on the Apogee website where you can get that information on the different flame colors. And then we talked about how to make a hybrid motor. And then we finally talked about Rocketoons. And then we also talked about how to adjust the pen width size here on the main screen. So we are at the end of our time. So it's after 3 o'clock now, so as soon as this is done, I'm going to check my email, and if you wanted the 6-month version of RockSim, I will send you an unlock code. It might take me a day to get them all, depending on how many people wanted them. And then if you want the 3-month one, it'll probably be by Monday. I'll give you an unlock code, but you don't need an unlock code for the first 30 days anyway, so that should get you going. Alright, so thank you everybody for being here. I didn't see any more solar eclipse stories, but I hope you had a good solar eclipse. It's going to be a long time before the next one. Yeah. But our next rocket launch, I think, is next weekend. So I'll be here next week again. We'll do this again. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to give you a countdown, and then we'll end the stream. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go out and launch something.